Well, good afternoon. It's Dr. Clemens here on Wednesday, June 15th. I'm recording this video. It's about 2:30 or so. So I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're staying safe in this heat. I have to admit, with my allergies and everything yesterday, I just tried to stay in and just work inside. I'm lucky to be able to do that because it was really warm yesterday. So I hope if you're outside that you're able to stay safe and that you're doing well this week. And thanks again. Sorry about any confusion on Monday with that tornado warning. One thing I mentioned to the class, for those of you that were able to make it, because I was actually already in the classroom when those notifications started happening. Always use your discretion. If we do, hopefully we won't have any other weather like that when our other in-class in-person meetings happens for the rest of this semester. But if it does happen, if we are in another situation where you see that there's bad weather or something really terrible, if you can get to class and then you have to get there later, that's fine. If you can't make it at all because of the flooding or something like that, just let me know. Send me an email. A lot of you did that because you weren't able to make it to class where you were. The weather was even worse. And so thank you for sending me an email and asking me for the notes and what you'd missed. Make sure to do that. If you're going to miss the class, just follow up with me, whether you're sick or whether something's come up or again, if we have hopefully we won't have another situation like on Monday with those tornado warnings. And it's usually in the spring semester that I have to say, use your judgment coming to campus if there's snow, because we did have a situation like that last semester early in February, where the weather was really bad. Classes didn't get canceled, and I put up an announcement. Luckily, I had some time to do that, saying, don't try to come to campus if you can't make it. But anyway, all that's the way of saying thanks for those of you that were able to make it. Thanks to those of you that sent me an email following up to get notes from Monday's class. So hopefully by now you've had a chance to take a look at the notes that I posted yesterday. That covers all the material for paper number 2. And in this video, I'm going to cover some of the stuff that I talked about in class on Monday. So I also want to give you a couple of reminders for this week. Remember that Monday is Juneteenth. It's the Juneteenth holiday. And so campus is closed. We don't have class on Monday. The same way for the July 4th holiday, we won't have class in a few weeks. And that's where, as I've mentioned before, I'll do additional video. So I'll have an extra video later this week, and then next Tuesday and Wednesday, I'll have additional videos to sort of fill in the blanks of what we would have done in class on Monday. But again, because of the holiday, in honor of the holiday, campus is closed and we don't have class on Monday. But as I said in class on Monday, I'm here to help with paper number 2. So please make sure to email me if you have any questions on it. I've put up the outline, as I said, for this paper on Blackboard. So take a look at that. The outline that we went over in class on Monday for paper number 2, which also, remember, is due on Tuesday, the 21st. So that's a little different. I'm here looking at my drawing table. I've got my date book on it. And if you remember, because Monday's a holiday, I've moved up that normal Monday due date to Tuesday. So paper number 2 is due on Tuesday by 5 p.m. You can send it to me earlier. Remember, that's just the final deadline to send it to me so that I can email you back to let you know that I got it. And that's why I don't have due dates typically at midnight and things like that, because I like to be able to respond to you immediately to say, I got it, don't worry about it, you're all set, and I'm going to start grading it. So in the meantime, like I said, I'm grading paper number 1. I'm enjoying those. Thank you for the great work on those. So you'll be seeing those comments and those grades this week for that first paper, and hopefully some of those suggestions, edits, and feedback will also help you as you're working on paper number 2. So just be on the lookout for the Google Doc for paper number 1, because as the week goes on, I typically grade a few papers every day. And so, by the end of the week, you'll see those comments and you'll see my suggestions from paper number 1 by the weekend. So just be on the lookout for that. If you haven't already seen comments and feedback on your paper, you'll see those in the next couple of days. So thanks again. And that's my usual pattern. Once papers come in by Monday, then I start grading them and having them back to you by the end of the week so that you've got that feedback as you're working on the next paper for the following week. Now, as for paper number 2, as you probably noticed, and I'm going to do my screen share here and just kind of briefly show you some of this. I'm going to show you the assignment. Again, take a look at it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to meet over Zoom. I'm happy to talk with you and answer questions. I'm happy to read drafts. As I said in Monday night, the only day of the week I typically don't check my email is on Saturdays. That's where I try to take a little bit of a break from school stuff, but I'm always back online by Sunday. So if you send me anything later in the day on Friday, or on Saturday, then I'll get back to you by Sunday with feedback and comments. Happy to meet again, as I said, over Zoom if you have any questions this week or going into next week, on the papers. That's always an option. But one thing that you'll notice is very different about paper number 2, just to kind of briefly touch on these topics, is that, first of all, there's more reading. So let me go into Blackboard and show you what I mean by that. If you take a look at, here I am in my Blackboard shell under readings and assignments, I've got the quiz, on these readings, which is due this Friday, the 17th. I initially posted these a couple of hours ago and realized I had the wrong, I had May open in my calendar. I didn't have June open. So again, I'll just blame the heat and say the heat was too much and I got the date wrong. But anyway, quiz number 2 is due by this Friday at 5 p.m. You can send it earlier. It just covers those 3 new readings, which you'll find here. So the readings for this week, they're all short, all on the subject of photography. They also focus on family photography, which is why we sort of discussed that image of Mike Rose's mom, Rosie, from the first essay that we read in class on Monday as kind of an analysis as a way into these readings. As I said in Monday's class, on photography is sort of the, I guess I'd call it the umbrella reading, in the sense that it covers the topics that are in the other 2. So it's kind of the main reading for this week in terms of summing up all the ideas on how we look at photographs, what they mean to us, what they mean to us today, particularly in the digital age in which we live. So the Susan Sontag essay from 1977, even though it's focusing on more old-fashioned photography, film cameras, Polaroids, a lot of her themes are very relevant, because in that essay, if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, she talks about family photographs, vacation photos, and news or media photographs, as we probably call them today. And so all those kind of tie into the topics. And you'll notice in addition to the 3 readings for this week, there's Sontag, Fu Fontai, who is a Vietnamese writer who is very well known for an image that was taken of her as a little girl during the Vietnam War, a very infamous image that you've probably seen. I haven't posted it because it's a disturbing one, but it was one that was very commonly circulated. And I can remember even seeing it when I was a kid in the 1970s, late 70s, because it was such an infamous image of the devastation of that war on soldiers and on civilians. And so she writes about that experience there and what it was like to be known for that photograph. She's turned it into a life of activism for other children who are wrapped up in violence, whether it's in school shootings or war, conflict zones around the world. It's a really, really fascinating look at how she experienced being photographed when she was a kid in this war zone, being helped then by the photographer. And I think her life was probably saved by that photographer. But then also talking about the aftermath of that, of being known for that as a young person and growing up with that photographic image of her in the middle of what was a napalm attack in the early 1970s during the war. And then Sally Mann, if you don't know her photography, is very well-known American photographer from the American South, who's especially well-known for some family photos, but also regional photos of the South. Really amazing photographer. And she talks about her philosophy of photography and family memories in that short essay from her autobiography. So they're all interconnected. I would say if you're going to read them in any kind of order, read Sontag first, even though she's the most difficult of the readings. She's also the most specific in some ways. It's really just a 3-point thesis. Make sure to have a dictionary with you when you're reading it, and please ask me for help with any questions. We did outline that essay a little bit together on Monday night, but it's challenging. I find her to be a challenging writer, but she's also really interesting. So just read hers first, and then read the other 2 essays, which kind of supplement the ideas in Sontag's essay, and are also more like the Mike Rose. So the Fontai and the Sally Mann essays are written more in that style than the more formal Sontag essay. So as you're reading those essays, the quiz is up here. I'm going to scroll back so you can see that here in the screen share. So that quiz is due Friday. It's very simple. It just sort of helps you walk through the readings, and it's really designed to hit the high points of each one of the readings, the main ideas, so that you can generate ideas for your paper. There's even a question on the quiz that asks you to tell me which of the topics you're going to write about. So that's my other thing that I want to point out in this brief video. you'll notice, and this is something that'll also happen for paper 3 and paper number 4 going forward, is that there's more options for this one. So you've got 4 different topics. They all relate in one way or another to either one of the readings, or in a couple of cases, they relate to 2 of the readings kind of put together for this week. So read these over on your own. In this video, I don't want to make it too long, so I'm not going to go through each one of these topics. I will have a separate video at the end of the week on Friday, where I'll briefly sort of talk about each one of these topics in a little bit more detail. But I want you to read them on your own, because they're pretty straightforward. They tie back to the reading specifically, and they do lay out what your thesis should be. They kind of give you an idea of how to shape your ideas. And so if you take a look at this with these directions, which also give you a sort of a summary of MLA formatting. So that's the other thing to remember with this paper, is you should have a works cited on it. It should follow this format. So please make sure you read the end of the directions as well, which give you a review of how to cite an MLA format. It also gives you a sample works cited with all the sources for this paper. So you can put together the works cited for this on your own, but remember to follow this format. Again, it's our first full paper where we're using more quotations. We only used 1 for paper number 1 from the Mike Rose essay. So in this one, we're using more of those quotations. You have to use at least 2 from your readings, as you see when you read through these directions. So, my directions, as you've probably noticed by now, are a little bit longer, but take your time, read through them, look at the questions, look at the review for the MLA format, and that's going to be kind of your safety net. So it kind of covers a lot of the material that maybe you'll have questions on, or if you have additional questions, this will give you kind of a good starting point for this second paper. Because basically what you're doing with this one, at least for the first 3 topics, topic number 4 is slightly different, because if you decide to do this one, you're responding more to some of the philosophical, ethical ideas that Fontai and Sontag talk about in terms of media photography. So that one's slightly different, as you'll notice when you read those directions. But topics number 1 through 3 basically ask you to select a photograph, either a family photo or a vacation photo, and then to not only respond to either Sontag or Sally Mann, because they're the writer you're responding to and quoting from, which I talk about in some of these directions, but you'll need a photo to analyze. So, and just to give you an example, like in Monday's class, I had brought in some of my old family photos that I typically use for this assignment. And one thing that I had caught in these old photos of mine is that in the house that I grew up in, where my great grandparents had also lived, not long, well, maybe a decade or so after they first got to the United States from Lithuania, we had this front porch that looked out on our front street on Bamford Avenue in Oakville, Connecticut. And every generation seemed to take photos there. This is a photo of my great grandfather, Anthony Budrys, in the early 1940s. And one thing I mentioned is that you'll notice in this photograph, we know it's early 1940s because there's an image in the window, the parlor window, showing that he has family members in the war effort. In this case, it would have been his sons, my great uncles, were in the army during World War II, and also my grandfather, my mom's dad was in North Africa and saw combat there. So this was kind of to commemorate. I think this was an image not only showing my great grandfather and his grandson. Actually, you can't see my cousin Giggy there. He's in the background. It's hard to see him. But I use this as an example because when I was a kid in the 1970s, they took a photo of me in the exact same location on that porch. There I am with my Aunt Annie's dog Spooky in probably 1974, maybe early 75, something like that. I'd have to ask my sister on the date. There's no date on the back of this, but that would be my guess since I was born in 73. So these are examples of the kind of photos you could do if you were doing like topic number 1, if you were doing the Sally Mann topic. You want to select a photo. Again, it could be a vacation photo also if you're doing topic number 2. I don't have any vacation photos here at my desk. I just have these family photos near me. But basically the goal of this paper is 2 things. On the one hand, you want to, in the first half of the paper, respond to one of these readers, and that's writers, excuse me. So that means Sontag, Sally Mann, or Fontai, because they're the experts in this area. So when you're writing a paper like this, the first half of the paper, before you get into discussing your opinions or the photograph you were going to analyze, you want to acknowledge the other people that have written on this particular topic. So that's why I mentioned in the outline, you want to put in those quotations from Sontag, for example, in the first half of the paper. That way the reader knows what you've been reading. What are the essays that you've been reading to think about this topic, about how photographs shape the way that we remember the way we remember the past, maybe even the way that we become familiar with people we never got a chance to meet. My great-grandfather, I knew my great-grandmother. She was alive when I was a kid, but he had passed away in the 1950s, so I never got to meet him. I only know him through these photographs. But we still have this kind of connection because of, I'm there in the same spot on that porch that he was on only 30 years before, which is not that much time beforehand in the grand scheme of things. And so that's one way that I can remember him. And that's something that Sontag talks about in her essay, how we use photographs to remember distant family members we never got to meet. If you're reading Sally Mann, she makes an argument that sometimes if we focus too much on photos, it almost obscures our memory because we're looking at the photo and not maybe remembering the actual people or the actual place where this happened, or it starts to, she says it influences our memory almost too much, which could be an interesting argument because up until the 1900s, nobody really had photographs, or most people didn't have photographs. Photography really starts in the 1800s, but it isn't widely spread until the early 20th century. And so that means for most of human history, we don't have any images like this unless you have a painting of someone or a sketch that you've drawn of them. You don't have a mechanical actual image of that person. And so that's why these writers are reflecting on these ideas. Now that we have images everywhere all the time bombarding us, what do we do with them? What do they help us remember? Do they make us forget certain things? Do they try to manipulate us? That's what some of Sally Mann's essay is about. That's what some of Fontai's, her essay is about, is like, how do we learn about history through photos? So there's a lot of rich stuff in this batch of readings, and you have a lot of options for these essays. So really read through the topics. Don't just pick the first one that you read on that list of 4 topics. Look through all 4 of them. Think about which one you might want to work on. Think about which one you'd have a good photo or a good opinion to share. Because as I said, the first half of this essay will really focus more on you quoting from and briefly responding to one of these writers. And then the second half of the essay is where you're going to get in more of your opinion. You could do an analysis of a photo like this. You could do an analysis of a vacation photo if you're doing topic number 2. So you have a lot of options with this one. But don't get overwhelmed. As I said in my videos last week, take your time, look through the readings first, take the quiz, look through the directions when you're doing the quiz. Again, it's open book, have the readings open in front of you so you can kind of think about what their main ideas are, and then start the paper. Try to start it maybe a little bit earlier if you get a chance than last week. If you found that you were only starting the paper maybe a day or so before, give yourself more time with this one, especially because we don't have class on Monday night, or I want you to enjoy the holiday as well and to celebrate Juneteenth. But take some time over the weekend, maybe, if you have some time to work on the paper. Send me a draft. I'll be happy to take a look at it. I'll also be available on Monday. I want to take a little bit of time away to celebrate the holiday, but I'll be available, since I normally would be on Mondays, to answer emails or to look at drafts. And so if you need to get in touch with me, then I'll be sure to check my email on the holiday as well, just to make sure everybody's doing okay with these essays. But as I always say, also enjoy it. What I found with this topic over the years, and I've given this one for probably close to a decade now, I've given this assignment in one form or another, using Sontag as a kind of basis. A lot of times people will write a lot of interesting stories, even about their families, if they do those topics, or about their opinions on something that we take for granted, because we can take any number of photos at the drop of a hat with our phones now. So it's not like when you had to drop off the film to the photomat, as we were saying on Monday, and wait to see it get developed and hope that you'd taken a good photograph. It's a very different landscape now, and we have been for a couple of decades. And so that's really what these topics are about. Like, how do we handle all this bombardment of all these images, whether they're ones we take ourselves on our phone or ones we see online or on television, or all from all these other places, and how do we understand them? And how do we process them? That's really the question that we're asking with this paper, with these topics. So I hope you enjoy the readings. They're brief, but they're really rich. There's a lot of good stuff in them. I hope you find something among those topics that you enjoy. So just to sum up this video, like I said, please email me with any questions. Email me with questions either on these readings, or on paper number 2, or on the quiz. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Be on the lookout for the comments on paper number 1. If you haven't already seen those, you'll see those over the next couple of days, and you'll have those back by the weekend with all my comments. And please reach out for help. If you have any questions at all on the readings, on the assignments, on the quiz, I'm happy to talk with you. I'll either answer your questions over email, or if you want to meet with me quickly over Zoom, I'm happy to do that. We'll set up the Zoom appointment. So please, make sure to contact me, especially since I won't see you in person on Monday. So I'll try to use these videos as a way to kind of keep the connection going, and also to hopefully keep your enthusiasm up as we do these papers. I'm looking forward to reading paper number 2 also, and to getting your thoughts on these it's sort of complicated but very fascinating topics. All right, so that's it for this video. Be careful again if you got to go out in the weather today. Drink a lot of water. Try to take breaks if you are working outside or have to work outside at all. And have a good rest of the week. And I'll be back on Friday, not only with our song of the week, maybe with a Rosie guest appearance. She's hiding out from the heat as we speak right now, and also with another video just as we get into the weekend with some other suggestions on more so on MLA formatting. I'll talk about that more in Friday's short video. So I'll see you then. Again, stay safe, enjoy the weather if you can when it cools down a little bit later today, and I'll talk to you on Friday in the next video. See you then. Bye.